This is such a pleasure and an honor, and it's been a privilege for me to have been involved with a lot of, more recently, a lot of SPUC-related activities. And I thank Roslyn so much. We were together, as she said, during the tour, and that was a blast. We had a great adventure going from one part of this country to the other. You know, it was wonderful, and to have met so many great young pro-life people in different universities. Now, just a little thing. Most of my work is done with promoting life in Africa and for Africa, especially with regards to the Western world and their effects on Africa. But today, I had decided to do something different. And from the program as well, I'm speaking on how an unjust law can stand in society and nobody, you know, many people would not even realize something is wrong. So my topic today is from opposing slavery to opposing abortion. So I'll be speaking a bit about slavery, and I'll be speaking a bit about abortion, and our thirst and our quest for authentic justice in modern society or in civilized society. I am hopeless here. So yeah, that's it. So, yeah, as I had mentioned, I really would have loved to talk about what I do every day, which is, you know, making it more and more difficult for Western organizations that are pro-abortion to promote their evil work in Africa. I would have loved to do that, but because this is a youth conference, I was just asking myself, what is a good way to at least give to the young adults who are going to, you know, sacrifice so much to be at this conference? It's not just for me to tell you, oh, Africa this and Africa that, and Africa we don't want abortion, and you know, and yet they want to force us. I just wanted to do something that would inspire you as well. If I fail, forgive me, but at least if I manage to inspire even a little bit in any of you, that will be for me just a gift. So this actually, I don't know, but for many African people, many black people, no matter where they come from, slavery is a touchy issue. Slavery is a touchy issue for everybody, but even more so for us, because I just always ask myself now, how could anybody have allowed it to happen? Especially when you watch movies or when you read books or stories about slavery and what black people had to endure. We've heard all of that, and I wouldn't rehash. But something happened to me some years ago. Actually, my day job, I work as a scientist in the NHS. And one of the things that I do in the line of my work is night shift, night duty. So I work a lot at night, keeping the hospital lab from burning down, and helping a few people who get drunk in the middle of the night and turn up in A&E and they ask us to do a test, and you know, all whatnot, and people who try to kill themselves because they've broken up with their boyfriends and such. So, but anyway, so one night I was working in the lab. This was in 2009, and we were two working together, myself and Siobhan, a young girl, a younger scientist, and who was assisting me in the lab that night. And I don't know if any of you work at night, but there is a pattern to it. I've done this for so many years that you know the pattern, that you start off with a lot of energy, and then around midnight you really want to sleep a little bit. Then at 2 o'clock your mind wakes up again, but it's almost as if you're in a drunken state. So at 2, we get very brutally honest. If you're working with someone, it's terrible because you're like a drunk person and you see almost anything. I don't know, like chemical reactions. There's a lot of things that happen there. 4 o'clock, you're getting a bit tired and your body is getting drained. And by 8 o'clock, when the next person comes to work, you're like, I'm leaving. You know, I'm getting out of this lab. So at 2 o'clock in the morning that day, we were in that drunken state. We weren't drunk. I could almost swear to that, but I wouldn't. But we were watching the television during one of our break times, myself and Siobhan. And there was a movie. It's not like you're paying attention because you're kind of half working, half watching TV so that you don't fall asleep. But there was a Victorian, I might be wrong about this, but like a Victorian type movie where, you know, women wear really lovely gowns, and it was just lovely. So she once said to me, "Oh, Uju," you know, just like a drunk person, "you know, sometimes I just wish I was alive like 200 years ago and 300 years ago when men would respect me and would be in this lovely dress and this and that." And I said, "Oh, Siobhan, me too." And she turned to me and said, "No, you wouldn't have wanted to be alive 200 years ago." I said, "Of course I would have wanted that." She said, "No, Uju, if we were alive 200 years ago, you would have been my slave." And nobody would let you be called Uju, because at work, my name is quite difficult to pronounce, and everybody keeps begging me, "Can you take something else, like Obianuju, Ekeocha, like tongue-tying?" She said, "Nobody would let you answer your lovely African name. I would have called you Jemima." Okay, so Siobhan, you know, but you know, we were in this stage, and Siobhan would never, she's a lovely girl, she would never have said this to me. Were we not in that state of mind, and just talking aimlessly. But it made me to think a lot, and since that day I have thought about it a lot, that yes, if I was in this country 300 years ago, I would not have been allowed to stand here to address most of you, because I would have been taken as an inferior being. Nobody's fault. These were all good people. That was a civilized society as much as any. But this is the little anecdote that happened to me that got me thinking that I lived in Nigeria up until 9 years ago, and then I moved here, and since then I've been living here and working normally, and everybody respects me like anybody else. I go in and do my job, which I'm qualified to do, and come out and get paid, just wages. And I live my life. I go for a driver's license. If I fail the test, I don't get it. I'm judged like everyone else, and I'm treated like everyone else. So it made me think a lot since that day, that we have come far. This society has come far. But also, it made me realize it really did happen. But why did it happen? So we'll think about the injustice of centuries past and what's legal slavery. I promise you I wouldn't dwell too much on slavery. It's kind of a depressing thing. Sometime last year, the movie 12 Years a Slave came out. It was a very difficult movie for me to watch. I don't know how many of you have watched it. And then I watched it. I was so struck by it. Cried a lot watching the movie, and then I went home that night and I wrote an article. Don't read it. It's online, but don't read it. Okay, read it. But, you know, but it's thinking about it. Why? For crying out loud, why did it happen? There was a logic to it. There was a logic to it. And you know, you don't just blame people and say, well, then they were terrible people. It was all wicked people in society, and everyone was uneducated and unsophisticated, and they couldn't see that these lovely black people are normal human beings like everyone else. And, you know, many were really educated people, and it could even be said that they had so much more in terms of educational advantage than we do now. I mean, they definitely studied more. They didn't have Facebook. They didn't have internet. They did their own mathematics and all. So these were smart people, but it still happened. They had doctors. They had lawyers. They had judges. It was, by all means, a really civilized society. But still, slavery lasted for decades and decades and centuries. So, but there was a logic to it. And for it to have happened, one has to always realize that there was a really sophisticated legal system that made it possible to happen. It wasn't just because, you know, people, you know, wanted to just go out and pick up slaves, but they actually had a legal system. If you go back if you go back in history to the era, maybe, I don't know who has watched the Gladiators here and movies like that, maybe then, I don't know what kind of systems they had, but slavery then was different. And I mean, when the Arabs went around and took slaves and kidnapped people and went away, I'm not talking about that, I'm talking about in the 1700s and 1800s. They had a legal system. somebody sat down and wrote the codes. They had the penal codes, and they had all kinds of codes and all kinds of laws that made it possible for one human being to have property rights over another human being. And then for them to have done that, they needed to have denied the humanity of the slaves, or the humanity, in this case, of the black people of that time. Either they denied it, or some of them, even though they knew these were human beings, would have just said, well, look at them. Definitely, they're not like us, you know. Look at the hair, look at the pigmentation. Definitely, there was a denial going on that these people are either not fully human, or they're not quite as human as us. So that denial happened. And it was convenient as well. Slavery was very convenient for trade and for the economy. In America, certainly there was a big cotton industry. In the West Indies, there was a sugar industry. You know, it was just a lot of things going on at the time that economically made it less likely that slavery would be abolished. But people enjoyed it, and society enjoyed it, and countries based their economy and their economic stability on the fact that there will be slaves to work in the fields. It was very convenient for many people. When women had yards and yards of clothes, surely nobody could have expected you to get in there without someone to tie your corset, right? You know, if I had those kind of clothes, I would need someone to be tying my corset every day. So it was really convenient for so many people. Also, there was the economic implications, but there was also the lack of initial opposition. That there was not always slavery in the British Empire, but one day it started, right? One day that law appeared from wherever, I don't know. But it did just suddenly appear, and then all of a sudden, it now became possible for the Navy and for the sailors to go out to the shores of Africa to pick up slaves, to take them across the ocean, to sell them off. And this industry began on the force of that. But did we see at that time some form of rejection in society? Maybe, but not enough. It wasn't enough. And of course, there was this pro-choice mentality. We did not. We're not the first people to launch the pro-choice mentality. It has always been there for various things, and definitely for slavery, it wasn't different. By the way, if you're thinking, why is this girl talking about slavery as if she was living in 200 years ago? Okay, I read this book. If you read it you become an expert. It's the life of William Wilberforce, and it was written by William Hague, who is an MP now. So you can pick up a copy. I don't know William Hague, he's not paying me, so you can photocopy mine if he doesn't arrest me for copyright, but this was how I knew a lot of the things that happened, and there, of course, there are many books and many movies. So that was the pro-choice mentality, the lack of vigorous rejection and opposition, even by the Christian communities, even by the churches. We didn't see the kind of force we needed to stop it at the time. So just think about it. So the institutions that made slavery possible, there were the legal people, the lawyers and the judges who sat there. Who has heard about the Dred Scott ruling in America? So it was just this Supreme Court judgment where a black person at the end of the day was told by the Supreme Court that he wasn't human enough to be a citizen of the United States. So there were judges, and these were real cases, and they were intricate cases that people can actually sit on it and make these judgments. So that they had their legal, very, very standard, I would say, legal systems, almost like as much as ours today. We had the Navy, the sailors, the handlers, the dealers, the people who used to sell the slaves, the overseers, the owners. This was a full-on industry. It happened. And there were so many people who were invested in it, and there were so many people who were involved in it. So even if you're not a slave owner, maybe your brother would be an overseer, maybe your cousin is a sailor, so it's touching you one way or the other. So then there were the instruments of slavery, of course, that was quite brutal. So all the things, there was a full market for it. There is somewhere in Ghana, in Cape Town, Ghana, where they still have a center where the slaves were brought before they were shipped off, right? And unless you think that this is me pointing the finger at the white people of the time, we also were quite guilty, because it would not have been possible if the Africans didn't make it possible. We had African slave catchers even at the time, who used to go out and help to capture children, who knew where to go to get children who were playing, who knew where to go to have access to women and men of a certain age or whatever, and sell it to the sailors, and sell them to the sailors. So they had a center in Cape Town, just by the coast, and if you go there today, it has been kept as a monument. I will go there in August, and I'm sure to get pictures, and I'll put it up online. But I hear it's a very scary place to stand in, because you just stand there and you can almost feel the slaves and the agony of the slaves, the chains, the shackles, every instrument of torture. It happened. So the injustice of slavery, of course, we know it is the ultimate, it's not the worst now, that I'm talking about it 200 years now, but at the time it was infringement on the right of freedom of another human being. And also the damages of slavery, it was terrible back then. It breaking up families, destroying people, killing of some of the slaves. And up to now, what we are suffering now is that there is an attitude that up to now we still haven't gotten rid of. And I know you all know what I'm talking about, okay? Things that have happened, especially in places like America, where it's more obvious, like Ferguson, oh, white cop shoots some black man, and then they go all the way out, and it's all the liberals are conservative. It's terrible, and we're still, I believe that these are all the vestiges of slavery that have hurt people so badly on both sides, and has led to like a rupture which up to now has not been healed. So that's slavery. And I put together this little picture slide. I tried to get the ones that were not too disgusting, too graphic, but this is what slavery looked like. Just very basic, right? So you can see it was very, very difficult to look at. You can see people on the boat. A lot of them there are some photographs there, but most of them are hand-painted. So the sailors, the this and that, the cotton people, you can see how some of the slaves were beaten up and such. But I want to call your attention to this picture in the middle, because my first page, I don't know who has a graphic memory here, but you would see this picture on my first page. It was a real artwork at the time. It actually was a medallion which was launched in 1787 by a guy in the UK here called Josiah Wedgwood. So it's called Am I Not a Man and a Brother? So that was the name of this artwork. And it was very popular at the time when the abolitionists were trying to get rid of slavery. And he made thousands and thousands of this medallion, and he was sharing it to people. Am I not a man and a brother? I love that. So this is it, right? This is what slavery looked like. Now, the last 3 slides I've had leading up to this one, because I'm so lazy, you know what I did? I copied them and I brought them up again. So I'm going to bring them up again. And I tell you and I promise you, there is no difference other than I just cancel the word slavery and I put abortion. Am I not smart? But that's just to show you it works exactly the same. So if you ask, how is this happening? The injustice of the centuries past is easy to look at because that's not you, and you can, sometimes some of us can't even relate to it. But we are living in a century which is actually in many ways much worse than the centuries past. Because now we have this thing called legal abortion. And you think about the logic of it, and the sophisticated legal system which is making it possible. How is it that the entire country, I read a Pew Research not too long ago actually, and they had, it was a global research, where, a global survey rather, and they were asking people all these questions about, you know, legal, moral issues, so sex outside of marriage, abortion, contraception, homosexual lifestyle, you know, all of that. So for abortion, it was quite interesting because the United Kingdom, only 25% of the people said they felt it was morally wrong. America had like 54% who said it was wrong, so more than half. But the UK, 75% of the people either identified as pro-abortion or pro-choice. Now, being somebody living in the UK, I find that quite scary, because that is exactly, if you wonder how did slavery happen, if 75% of the people are pro-choice about it, or pro-slavery, then it's not going anywhere. Especially if the 25% is not strong enough to push back the 75%. So, it is possible, because there are very strong people who think it's okay, and who want it to be okay for abortion to continue being there, that children should be killed in the womb. And the people who are against abortion do not quite have, or have not yet mustered that which it takes to push back 75%, because 75% is a rather large percentage. So it takes a lot, yeah? So the legal system making it possible is all sophisticated, it's all, you know, that the Act of Abortion of 1967 is there, and each time you want to make a little amendment to it, on our side, they knock us off. What happened last Monday or 2 Mondays ago? Even the ban for selective sex abortion, we could not get that one. So this is a really sophisticated system, and it is what is keeping it standing, part of it. There is also the denial of the humanity of the unborn. There's just two things I want to say about this. Last year, I was at the United Nations, and I was in this meeting. I'm sure some of you have heard these stories, like, oh, Uju again and the UN story. Yeah, I was at the UN in this meeting, and it was about 30 or 40 women, and they were talking about abortion. They were pro-abortion. But what scared me the most was just the way these women denied the humanity. They wouldn't even mention the word baby. If it's a child in the womb, it's really rare that they're mentioned in the UN, in no matter what forum. I think it was last week, the Kenyan ambassador to the United Nations made a small comment and said something like, well, I think we should do something to help women and children, even children before they are born. And all of a sudden, the whole pro-life community in the world went like, oh, wonderful, this guy is so pro-life. But think about it. Nobody will admit is a child that deserves protection, that deserves good health care, that deserves anything at all, even at the UN. So we are denying, as a global community, the humanity of the child before the baby is born. It's not a baby. Somebody said until you bring them back from the hospital, not a baby. When they kick in the womb, still not a baby. You know, it's ridiculous. So, well, that is what is making it possible. The second thing I wanted to say about the humanity, denial of the humanity of the born child, I have now forgotten. But I shall get back to it. But anyway, the convenience as well of abortion, why is it still there? Because it's convenient. You know, people want to do away with that which is just not planned, that which is not perfect, right? It's, you know, it's only the planned and the perfect who get to live. But we keep it. And now, even with the selective sex abortion, for folks, so societies and people and cultures that really prefer male children, like the Africans and some of the Asians, it's quite convenient if you're able to just tell, right? You know, when I was little, I have all these aunties, in my life. And when they were all having their babies, my parents always used to tell us, pray that it's a boy, right? There was this auntie, she had a girl. Oh gosh, my dad was like, you guys start praying for your auntie. When she was pregnant, as if that wasn't already determined. I mean, I was a child. But we used to pray, oh God, let it be a boy, right? And then she had her boy. And we're like, God answers prayers, right? So anytime, for the Africans, it's such a big deal that you have to have a boy. My mom had a girl, and then she went to my dad's mom and she said, I want a divorce. So my grandmother said, no, you're gonna stay, you're gonna have a boy, you're gonna have, lots of boys. And then she had 3 boys and she was like, okay, yeah, you were right. So, but imagine now in this age of selective sex abortion, if you're able to just look in and say, oh, it's a girl, take out. It looks like a joke here that this ban wasn't held up or wasn't upheld, but the devastation is not going to be, maybe not only just for the United Kingdom, but by the time the UK perfects it, it is going to lash out at the rest of the world, and for nations and cultures who really want baby boys and who promote baby boys, they will unleash a terrible evil upon the women of the world, where people just say, well, it's not my fault, God gave me a girl this time. But this time it will always be the women's fault if you cannot enact your selective sex abortion. See what I mean? It's a terrible evil. And unfortunately, just like the slavery, that the UK, I didn't say this, but the Great Britain of the time, or the British Empire, was actually, even though it seems now as if America was the place where all the slaves were ending up, in the West Indies and the United States, but the British Empire made it possible. The British naval system made it possible for slaves to go, and all the places where, like the British colonies, right, the 13 colonies, that was where you had all the slaves around the world. So the Great Britain is just a very tiny patch of land, but that made it possible for slaves to be held. 3 million slaves, according to that book, 3 million slaves were transported during this era from Africa to the Americas and to the British colonies, in fact, 3 million. To tell you the capacity of 3 million, we are 1.1 black people in the UK now. So imagine if all of us are just shipped off next week. And then they say, get us more people because it's not enough, we need 3 times more. So it was a huge number of people, but abortion is even so much more impactful because we have had so far 2 billion since 1967. And the UK, again, is right at the front. It's almost like the UK, we're conservative and they come up looking conservative and calm, and we're not like, America with their 9 months abortion and all whatnot. But what the UK actually does in civilization is to be the first to push something, and then it goes off, right? It goes off. They did it with slavery. And it's as if, no, we didn't have any slaves in the United Kingdom. Look at us, check out everywhere. It's in the Americas, but they made it possible. The same with abortion. 1967, when the abortion law was passed, almost nobody, except maybe Russia, nobody had legal abortion. But the UK said, just, this little, they always are the first to start. And once they start, the rest of the world will perfect it. So it's a shame. I think it's a shame, and I'm not saying this to you, okay? I'm saying this to me as well because I'm also part of this society now. Anyway, it's also quite financially astounding how wealthy the abortion industry is and how much money. I wouldn't be getting into all this because most of you know these details and facts more than myself. But how much goes into abortion? How much does the government give to abortion organizations, Mary Stopes International, BPAS, all these people? They have so much money, and you wonder, how so? You're not producing anything, but why is there so much money in this industry? There is just so much there. And right now, where it's getting us the most is that we do not see the kind of outrage for what abortion truly is, the killing of innocent children. even as a black person, I will tell you now that I hate what slavery did to black people. But I think abortion is so much worse. It is so much worse. And I would say that any day. I'd rather be a slave than be aborted, right? Don't want to be a slave though, but it's, you know, this is the height of it. I don't know how much worse it can be, how much more injustice that one can actually mete out than abortion, whether you can go any further than that. But this is the most innocent creature, and we're managing to get the legal system and the will and the community that will say yes to the slaughter of these ones. So the pro-choice, yeah, that's the 75% I talked about. The pro-choice mentality is where the shame really is, that there is a slaughter of the innocent, and 75% of the people are willing to stand back. You know, I have some pro-choice friends, well, used to. Okay, like the moment I started doing a lot of pro-life things, it was hard for me because one of them I said to her, you know, I think the way you are now, you would have allowed me to be a slave. Like, you would not have fought for me. And she said, no, and she was French. She said, oh, you know, of course, they hate slavery. No, but you love abortion. That means that you are already in the mindset of denying the humanity of the one that you do not see, or the one that society cannot agree on, that this is human, or this person is just as human as anyone else. So I don't have lots of pro-choice friends, I'm sorry. So, yeah, so again, this is one of my, you know, slides repeated, but I'm lazy, so what can I say? So, again, think about the institution of abortion. Think about the legal people, all the lawyers and judges and Supreme Court. How could I have missed that? The one that happened, Mary Dugan, I heard she's here. She's, you know, I'm a fan. And I will be taking her autograph today, so if you see her, tell her. So, but look at, that was a sophisticated case that eventually showed, no, everybody has to submit to the era of abortion, right? Think about all the people involved in it. All the lawyers, all the Supreme Court people, the medical people. I work for the NHS, I don't work in the line of abortion, but we know it happens. I work in the lab. And a few weeks ago, someone called me in the lab and they needed me to get this drug we give to some women when, depends on their blood type, when they have a baby. I won't bore you with the details, but she said to me, oh, can you prepare this drug for us? I said, okay, when did the woman have her baby? I was taking the details. She said, no, she just had a TOP, termination of pregnancy. And I'm thinking, oh, this is, you know, I couldn't believe someone would be telling me that she was on the phone. She could have seen me cringe. But, well, thank God, we haven't gotten to that era when, you know, you maybe look at people while you're speaking to them on the phone. So you think about the escorts, yeah, the cool abortion, terrible people, who escort people into abortion clinics while the pro-life people are praying to protect them from hearing the truth. Think about the lobbyists. I deal with the lobbyists a lot. The lobbyists are the ones who go to different places and make sure that they have the stronghold of abortion there. So here, I think the lobbyists don't feature so much because this society has actually bought into abortion, unfortunately. But in Africa, we see them because a lot of African countries are still pro-life. So we see people from Maristopes who actually are British people, like they come from here, very posh people, and then they go to our African leaders and they're like, oh, this abortion is good for African women, it's for their freedom, it's for their development, and it's horrible. So the lobbyists are deep in it. The radical feminists, the population control people, everybody's wanting abortion. Think about the instruments of abortion and the injustice of abortion, which is the ultimate injustice, the infringement of the right to life of the child. Remember the last one was the right to freedom, but this one is the right to life, which should be the first right given to us as human beings. Now, okay, so the damages of abortion. Today, what is abortion? The damages are horrible, so I won't get into it. We all know it. But I tell you that as today, we all still sit and question the society that made slavery possible And up to today, many countries are still paying out a lot in order to make black people forget. You know, in some communities, people are still trying to make up almost for the damages of slavery. Oh, we will do that. We're going to have that hundreds of years to come. That perhaps one day our children's children will question, how could it have even been possible for innocent children to be killed in the womb? Well, we won't live to see that day. But this is the slide. See how the other one had all those really rough pictures, and you can see if you're a slave overseer, you look gruff and you look, you know, at least people know what you're doing is bad, and you know that what you're doing is bad. And it was very obvious. Slavery was very ugly to look at. Abortion is very ugly to look at. Make no mistakes about it. And I tried not to put like the really difficult pictures up. But what I got was the little precious feet of a baby. That was the closest I could come. Not to traumatize some people here, but that was as close as I could get. I needed to show a little bit the violence of abortion, that it does kill an actual human being. It's not just removal of the product of conception. It is the death of a human being. And that's the baby in the middle. This is our own, am I not a man and a brother, right? We had the one then, but this is it. Am I not a child? Am I not a baby? Question mark. These are women, right? Then we had really terrible overseers and just really ugly looking people and gruff looking men, beaten slaves. But now this is the new face of injustice, that women, some of the women and men who are promoting abortion, look at how nice they look. If I couldn't read, I would just be like, isn't this wonderful? My grandmother, she's passed on now, but she couldn't read English. And I bet you if I showed her this picture, she'd be like, oh, lovely girl. But what are they carrying? They're carrying signs that say abortion on demand without apology. If we did the same thing, seeing that my slide could be removed and changed, slavery on demand without apology, can you believe that? But this is even worse than slavery. And they are smiling and they look so gorgeous with their lovely designer sunglasses. And you're just saying, oh gosh, what have we come to? This is the face of abortion. These are escorts. These are clinic escorts, and they look so lovely. And, you know, they're there to protect women from those crazy 40 days for life people. They're so violent, they can pray us to death. So, but anyway, that's what they look like. They're so gorgeous, right? But these are even more evil, I would say. If abortion is worse than slavery, that means that these people, when history is written and the textbooks come together, and we have chapter 2, slavery, chapter 3, abortion, these are the pictures that will be there. They're much worse than the sailors. Then, I don't know how else to explain it, but I don't want to be these people, unless one day they repent and they can take other pictures with big signs and we can put them side by side and say, this was when they were evil, this is when they're good. So, but for now, this is really bad for our civilized society if we say that we live in a civilized culture, and this is it. I think I've used up half of my talk, and this is just the beginning. Okay, Planned Parenthood, Mary Stopes International, these are all the people making abortion possible. Now, to the next stage. Oh, this is it. This is what, somebody actually put these two together, right? So this is what was on the cover of the talk on the first page, but Am I Not a Man and a Brother? You can see the one from 1887. You can see the one from now. And we're reliving history. We are right in the middle of it. Does anybody know anybody here? Anybody else? Okay. Yeah, the other one is a painting. Could be anybody. I mean, yeah, we wish it was a photograph, but that's actually William Wilberforce. And when people think about Wilberforce, they think about a really old man, because Wilberforce died at 73, age 73, and we just keep thinking, okay, yeah, he's a really old guy, and he worked against slavery, and he was this really old guy, and then he helped to abolish slavery, and he was a really old guy, so surely has nothing to do with me. But that is Wilberforce when he was actually fighting against abortion. And how old was he when he became an MP? William Wilberforce, by the way, okay, I'll tell you about him in the next slide. So that's Wilberforce, and that's David Steele, whom I will talk about in a minute, because many people, some people do not know him. And this woman is Sarah Weddington, and again, I will tell you about her. And these were all young people. When he did his work, the first one, he was 24, because the reason I bring this up is because this is a youth conference, and so I know many people are young, not me, and a few other speakers, but most of you are like young, so it has to be relevant to you. 24, 28, 26, and I'll tell you what they all did, and they all gave us the legacy of their youth. So this is the beginning of the abolition. Abolition is the end of slavery, of course, but William Wilberforce, just very quickly, he was one of you. When I say one of you, he was only 20, became an MP, and was never really against slavery, but he somehow became more how do you say it? He had a Christian experience, and then he was converted, and he took it up seriously. Some people came to him to talk about the slavery and abolition, and he got converted. So when you're speaking to your friends who are pro-choice, if you're not like me and you still have pro-choice friends, just know that he was pro-choice, and then somebody made him against, against slavery. So do not be discouraged. He also came to conversion, and he fought. He was 24 years old when he took that decision that he will fight slavery to the end. And he fought for 24 years from when he was 24. So when he was 28, by 1807, the first thing happened, which was against slavery, and that was the abolition of the slave trade. Not slavery, but the slave trade, which, as I told you, the British Empire had been making possible, even though this would seem as if it was all happening in America, but the heart of it was here. So the Navy, the sailors, all of that ended in 1807. That machinery was killed, and it was because of his work in the Parliament. And he, of course, he was 24, he was audacious, he gave us a lasting legacy, and somehow it seems a little bit awkward to say, or a little bit remote, but because of him, I can stand here today to speak to you. So in many ways, I am grateful to him. I'm grateful for his work. I'm grateful that he was not pro-choice, because I will not be thanking a pro-choice person today for keeping us as slaves. Right? And he suffered persecution. Again, was he honored for his work? No, he was mocked, he was reviled, and people hated him, he lost friends, and all whatnot. So this was his work, this was his life work, the abolition of the slave trade. Eventually, slavery got abolished 26 years later, and 3 days, he was ill, and 3 days before he died, somebody came to him and told him that it was coming up at the House of Commons and it would pass. It was most likely, almost 100% certain, that slavery was going to come to an end. When he heard it, then he rejoiced, and the next day he became very ill and then died 2 days later. So I think he was just kind of hanging on and waiting to see the very end of slavery. Slavery was abolished 1 month after he died. So this man is a man of great honor. He's from Yorkshire. So you can be him. You know, he was 24 when the work started. So if you are more than 24, I think you're a bit late. Start now. Right? He was 20 years when he got into the parliament. So I know that this is the age range, and never believe and never think that the abolition of abortion is not your work. but he did it. And they also had pro-choice people, and they had a big enemy. Slavery was a beast. Abortion is even a bigger beast. It's a monster. It's a real coin, and it's beautiful. And when I saw it, I had to own it. You know, like, oh, I really want this coin. It's the Kuna, 25. Yeah, I don't know. It's worth £2. It's not a lot, but you know what? Our work, when it does come through, maybe 200 years from now, we will have a pound coin or £2 coin that looks like that. And the world will know that indeed we have achieved and attained, by the grace of God, the work of authentic justice. Thank you.